So coming to FC24 is a brand new patch that a lot of people are a little bit up in the air with regards to whether it's going to be good or bad for the game, because we are seeing a nerf to Travellas and to the byline drive. And in doing so in that, I think we're going to see possibly a meta shift ever so slightly, where players will look for more of a specific way of trying to get in behind. And one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about is a 5 at the back being quite prominent now. The reason why 5 and 3 at the backs haven't been as prominent this year is because it cannot be played in pro play. So because it's not played in pro play and pro players aren't using it in division rivals and champs, it naturally just doesn't obviously go through into, you know, your elite division players, your middle tier players, and then your casual players. Now, this necessarily might not change because they still can't play it in pro play. However, for the average player base right now, one of the ways that you might be able to just defend a little bit better, because Travellas aren't going to be as good and because the byline drives aren't going to be good, is putting more numbers behind the ball. So that could be a little bit of an issue. So we're going to talk to you about some custom tactics that can work to play the 5 at the back and to beat the 5 at the back as well. And why do I think the 5 at the back will be prominent? And the main reason for this is I think having players at fullback with the whipped pass playstyle, you can still do this in a 4 at the back, by the way, in like a 4-3-2-1, but I just think it'll be easier in the 5 at the back. Having players that have the whipped pass playstyle to essentially look for those German crosses, where you look for crosses from deep, could be super easy. And again, to kind of reiterate, the reason why players are going to do this is because more numbers behind the ball makes it harder to break down. Well, if you can't go for a Travella, you can't go for a finesse, it's not as easy to drive the byline, and making it compact in the middle, how are people going to break them down? So 5 at the back makes it easy for you to do that. And then how do you beat your opponent using it? By obviously looking to hit on the counter, looking to be quick, to be direct, and these are what these tactics are going to do. Fear not though, there are ways to beat the 5 at the back, which we're going to touch on as well. All right, so the 5 at the back that we are going to talk about today is the 5-2-2-1. Solid formation, which I think is very easy for you to kind of replicate what you almost see in the 4-3-2-1 with the left forward, right forward, and striker. It's not the full same in the 5-2-2-1, but it works in a similar sort of setup. And the tactics that we're going to go for, we're going to talk about new gen and old gen here. Defensive style, I go balanced. You know, you can go press on heavy touch, press on possession loss, but I don't feel there's a need. When you're wanting to run the 5 at the back and make it difficult to break down, just putting numbers behind the ball. Manually pressing yourself, using your second man press, your partial team press, and so on is fine. No need to go too aggressive on anything else. Defense, width and depth, we're going to go 45 on the width, and in depth, we're going to go 66. That's just going to tuck us in ever so slightly to kind of give us a little bit more compactness, and then the depth is 66. If you're on old gen, I always talk about this, the game is a little bit more open, a little bit more free flowing. I think running a little bit of a lower depth for players that can't right stick switch as good, can't deal with through balls and so on, can be nice. So somewhere between 40 to 45 is a pretty good sweet spot. Us running 66 depth will see us get an automatic AI press because we're running 46 depth and above. It isn't as good as obviously it used to be, but it is still there. Okay, we don't run the 71 depth here because we don't need to run that high line. We are essentially kind of going to a, if we lose the ball, we put numbers behind. We don't need to be super aggressive. We don't need to keep that high line and give up the space in behind. Now, this is where the difference comes in. This tactic actually is a long ball in build-up play. I haven't really run long ball this year because I haven't really looked to hit on the counter as my kind of go-to play style. But if you are going to be putting numbers behind the ball and kind of wanting to use that right wing and that left wing and then a striker to go, the long ball can do that. If we can't hit on the counter and use that pace, what do we resort back to? That's when we resort back to that left wing back, that right wing back, getting forward and looking for those deep crosses. Chance creation, we go direct passing. This pushes the opponent's defense back further, giving us more room in the middle, then to possibly look for some centre mids to drive through as well. Width, we go 45, players in box is 5, corners and free kicks is 1. Now, the player instructions is a massive part to this 5-2-2-1. How do we want it? I run Lukaku up front here. If you can have a player that is competent in the air, I think you'd do better with this, but you can still run players that are just ultra quick. Lukaku's on stay forward. Now, your right wing and left wing, you can have them on come back on defense if you want, but one thing that you need to take into account with this is it doesn't give you the ability to counter attack as quick, so then you would be looking more to build up naturally, and then maybe you wouldn't have it on long ball, you just have it on balance. But if you want to really frustrate the opponent and really park everything behind the ball and make it so difficult to break down, feel free to run the comeback on defense. Myself, I don't like comeback on defense. I think it's a little bit too much. I'm happily manually pulling these players back, but I'd like to give myself that little bit of an outball. Now, I am going to run Salah and Neymar on the left and the right hand side. And the reason why that they're on their sides there to not look for the finesse is, yes, Trivelas aren't going to be as good, but it's for the crosses. It's to look up for that setups into Lukaku. Okay. Now, your left wing back and right wing back are both going to be on join the attack and overlap. These are crucial to getting forward because you're running a 5-back. When you attack, you essentially defend in a 3-back. You know, we want to get our numbers forward. That's where the 5-back does super well in the attack. It gives you that extra width. It's so difficult for the opponent to deal with, and how, you know, they need to deal with it really is almost matching you at times. For our 2 centre mids, we're on cut passing lanes and cover centre. No stay back while attacking. If you can have centre mid that can make deep runs and get into the box for the crosses, you know, with that whipped pass that we're talking about, that is going to help you. You know, if you had someone really small here like Kante, it's going to be a little bit difficult. So Talisca kind of does that job. And then obviously your 3 centre backs just on stay back while attacking. So that might be a little bit more common. People might not necessarily be running the 5-2-2-1. They might run the 5-4-1 again, the 5-2-1-2 or the 5-3-2 or the 5-2-3. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. They might become a little bit more prominent. People may still, well, people will still run the 4-3-2-1. That is still going to be super strong. But when you're finding players are going, I don't really know how to score, players can kind of combat that by going, well, what about if I make it really more difficult for you to score by putting numbers behind the ball? And that's obviously what the 5 at the back does. Now, if you match a 5 at the back and you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to break it down, what do you have to do? The 4-2-4 or the 4-2-3-1 with your all attackers on stay forward will be your best friend. You have to quickly hit on the counter yourself. Why? Well, they're going to send their wing backs up, right? If you can isolate up against their 3 centre backs like you can in this 4-2-4, you will cause them so much trouble. So if you match a 5 at the back, try the 4-2-4, 4-2-3-1 with all the attackers and stay forward. You don't need to run constant pressure. Obviously, this is my tactic that I run in the late in the game if I'm losing, you know, 3-1 or something. How would you kind of do it? This sort of stuff doesn't matter when you're playing against a 5 at the back. Like, yes, maybe long ball could help to hit on the counter. Direct passing would be a must. The width I'm not too fussed about. It's this sort of stuff here. Having all of your attackers on stay forward to be aggressive to hit on the counter. Whether you want to do that in the 4-2-4, the 4-2-3-1, or even the 4-3-2-1, you can do it in this as well, but you'd have to have your 3 attackers on stay forward. The idea is that you want to get into that 1v1 isolated battle and hopefully have that extra player, which you would do in the 4-2-4. So that's how I deal with it. That's what I think is going to come. Slightly, maybe in champs and rivals, I think 5 at the back will be a little bit more prominent. The only thing is that I think to add on to it is that it won't be as prominent if people don't push it out too much. And what I mean by that is because the pros can't play it in comp and they've got no real reason to play rivals, they're not going to care. They're not going to play it in champs because they're good enough anyway on their own. They're still going to probably run the 4-3-2-1 and have fun with it. It's just whether the average sort of player base goes, I'm going to make the game so hard for you by putting numbers behind the ball. So that's kind of why I've spoke about it and how you can deal with it and how you can play against it, but how you can use it as well, should you wish to. All right. Let me know what you think of the new patch. Whether you think it's good, bad, are you happy they've changed Trivelas and the byline drives, all that sort of stuff. I'll catch all of you in the next one. Bye-bye.